So let's quickly recap the highlights of the finance minister's address to the nation. Discretionary spending is going to be cut by an additional 10%, 50% cut in fuel coupon allocation for all political appointees effective 1st February, a moratorium on imported vehicles, a moratorium on foreign travels except pre-approved, eliminating ghost names on the payroll. IPP capacity charges will also be reviewed. Capacity that is down from 20%. A moratorium on in new public sector institutions, prioritizing ongoing projects over new projects that the finance minister has also detailed. The finance minister also says they would pursue a comprehensive reprofiling strategies to reduce the interest expense burden on the fiscal. Cabinet has also approved that ministers and heads of SOEs to contribute 30% of their salaries from April to December 2022 to the consolidated fund. They will contribute. So this is it doesn't sound like this is a cut per se. It's a contribution. And this is very specific from April to December, which means that after December, you'll probably expect that they will return to what they used to take. Reducing expenditure on all meetings and conferences by 50% effective immediately. Prioritizing ongoing projects over new projects. And you've also had the impose a moratorium on establishment of new public sector institutions. But also, the government has also proposed today that they intend to wean public tertiary institutions of government payroll and give them some grants instead. I'm sure you're looking forward to hearing what will happen to the fuel price increases that you pay at the pumps. This is what the finance minister announced today. It says to mitigate the impact, the rising price of petroleum products at the pumps, for the next 3 months, government has decided to reduce margins in the petroleum price build-up by a total of 15 pesos per litre, with which will take effect from the 1st of April. And so just 3 months. And so we expect that at the end of the 3 months, it may return to what it used to be at the pumps. So that is it. So what it means that the expected reduction in prices, petrol will go down by 1.6% and diesel by 1.4% also. The MPA is doing some other things to try and bring this down further. As far as revenue goes, the finance minister is very emphatic that they will go to Parliament for the passage of the E-levy bill, and he just said that he's hoping to do this by the end of March. That's one of the things as far as this is concerned. Winston, let's wrap up. So these are the measures.
Well, 1.6%. Woefully inadequate. One would have expected that, other taxes, for instance, petroleum, sanitation and pollution levy, 10 pesos should not be there at this time. Some other energy sector levies of 20 pesos should not be there at this time because of the challenges that we are faced with. So that's woefully inadequate. I'm interested in winning of public tertiary institutions from the public payroll and the grants. I want to know how much would be giving, to them. When you say you're cutting over 30% of your salaries and contributing it to the consolidated fund, how is that going to be spent? How is that going to help us? Is something I would want to find details, for instance, because you can always say we're cutting it and putting it back into the consolidated fund. You could also decide to cut it, and so you don't pay it at all. And what that would mean will be a reduction in your expenditure. But what I do understand is that if you're putting it back into the consolidated fund, it means you can then spend it on other sectors. Mind you, we're talking about a 30% cut in discretionary expenditure. What's that 30% cut we're talking about? We don't have time, but let me just do this, Evans. We've been talking about this for a very long time. Look, if you look at your total expenditure of 137 billion Ghana cedis, you have compensation of employees at 35 billion cedis. Non-discretionary, you can't touch it. You have interest payments of 37 billion. You can't touch it. That takes you to 72 billion. You can't touch this. You also have grants to other government units, 26 billion. That takes you to 98 billion. You can't touch that also. You have other earmark funds, 5 billion. That takes you to 103 billion. You're left with about 25 billion that you can really touch. So this cut is not as huge as we may think. You're looking at cutting down 30% out of some 25 to 30 billion Ghana cedis. Then finally, you talk about the fact that the minister has talked about all these reductions. We want to see its implementation. Don't just say there is a team monitoring it. We want to see how much you are giving them and how much you're giving them now. If there's anything that should be clear here, it is accountability. We don't have time, so I end it here.
Charles?
Well, Evans, I was expecting the finance minister to tell us how the debt will be brought down in future. Future could be tomorrow or 2 years or 3 years to come. But clearly we didn't see how this will be done. If you look at the savings that would be accrued from these measures, it's not enough to bring the deficit. I'm saying this because if you look at the other report from the World Bank, IMF, we are talking about arrears of about 5%. So clearly the deficit, which is about the deficit target, which the minister pegs it to about 7.45%, is not enough. You get the point I'm making, because if you are going to add these hidden arrears, definitely the deficit is much higher. In terms of the relief, I'm still not happy, because if you look at the petroleum price build-up, I was expecting some of the taxes to be removed. That could have cushioned us further. You understand? You cannot use the argument that Ghana imports 5.2% of oil relatively to import. That is not enough argument, because the issue is we are overburdened now, and you need to cushion us. That is the question most consumers or Ghanaians will be asking for. So fine, these measures will send some level of signaling effect to the market and investors. However, like Winston said, the implementation is very key. We need to have a mechanism to be able to implement this to the core, because that is the only way you can come back and say that you have been able to achieve majority of the measures in place. In conclusion, the E-levy, I was expecting the rate to come down further. 1.50 is still on the high side, because experiences have shown us in other countries that it has affected mobile money.
Even that is not confirmed yet. I mean, we still have to go to Parliament to now make that reality.
But you see, for me, I've always said that it's a necessary evil. The reason why I'm saying this is that we need more revenue. As we speak, some of the bills have not gone through Parliament. We are almost getting to the end of Q1. We are entering the second quarter. We could face similar challenges in second quarter, which will take us to the second half of the year.
I mean, he's indicated that he expects the E-levy passed by March. By the way, I mean, there's a lot more that we will be analyzing for you as we all begin to digest what the finance minister had said. And this reminds me of 2014, 2015, when the Setepa's economy was struggling just as this. They also announced a raft of measures such as this, same, very, very similar. Eventually, they still had to go to the IMF then. The finance minister today has been categorical again that no IMF. And so this is what we are banging our hopes on to save the economy. And we have a lot of time to, measure its impact in the coming months. Bless is taking over now with Pulse. Hello, Bless.
Hello, Evans, and for those of you on the JoyNews channel, we're grateful that you're staying with us. This is our continuous coverage of the finance minister's address on the economic challenges. What we do know is that government is actually scaling up austerity measures in the wake of an imminent collapse of the economy. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta a couple of hours ago indicated deep cutting measures that will ensure frugality in the public sector. So let's give you some breakdown as to the measures that government is attempting to roll out to deal with the economic challenges. You have that on your screens as we speak. The first point is that there will be some level of reforms as far as discretionary spending is concerned. That will be cut by an additional 10%. So you have that there as part of the measures that government has just announced. The second point is that there will also be a 50% cut in fuel coupon allocations for all political appointees and heads of government institutions, including SOEs, effective 1st of April 2022. And then the third point is that government has also imposed a complete moratorium on the purchase of imported vehicles for the rest of the year. So these are the very key 3 points that we're learning from the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, who is giving us much more measures that will be rolled out in the coming days, sector by sector. We'll be breaking all of these down for you here on The Pulse. The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities Dignilu, affordable, safe sanitation. Don't forget that we are also this afternoon live on all of our social media handles. It's JoyNews on TV and also on YouTube as well. It's the JoyNews channel as well. Just be on the lookout for us there, and then we'll go through all of the processes for you. But we have some of the measures, some more measures that the government has been announcing. You have that point 4 is here. The government is also indicating that they will impose a complete moratorium on the purchase of imported vehicles for the rest of the year. So that's not the end of the process. If government used to buy vehicles in the past, that's not going to happen, at least for this year, and it's all part of the austerity plans that the minister is announcing to us at this moment. We also do know that there are some more measures, including government deciding that it will impose moratorium on all foreign travels. That has been a subject of controversy. We know about what the minority has been saying in Parliament with regard to the presidential travels and how the president is not mindful of the public purse in that regard. But now we know that all public officials, will see if that would equally apply to the president, but we're not too sure about that. All we know is that for now, government has imposed that ban on foreign travels, except, and here's the exemption, unless it's got to do with pre-approved critical, the word is critical and statutory travel. So, well, if it's in line with law, then you would need to travel. That's what we're getting from the Finance Ministry today. But that's not all. There's also another point that we also need to consider. Point 6 talks about the fact that government will conclude on ongoing measures to eliminate ghost workers from the government payroll by end of December 2022. Some would say this is a mid or a longer term measure or solution to the challenges that we're facing as a country. But considering what experts have been saying about the public sector and a lot in there, you can't just be oblivious of the fact that there are some names that are on the public payroll which need to be dealt with. So definitely that's one of the measures that government is also announcing to us this afternoon. We're also learning that government is concluding the renegotiation of the energy sector IPPs, that's the power producers and those who've been selling to us as a nation. Government has always made the case that we have some non-performing agreement which needs to be reviewed, and that is certainly on the table for the Finance Ministry as part of its grand plan to deal with the concerns. Then we also have the imposition on the of a moratorium on establishment of new public sector institutions by end of April 2022. So definitely we won't see new institutions being set up, and we won't see new government arrangement in terms of bureaucracies that's being announced by the Finance Ministry. There's also point 9 here indicating that priorities on ongoing public projects over new projects as well. That's another consideration from government, which means that additional measures that government is intending to roll out in the coming years, these promises may suffer some setbacks. We are not sure of how deep cutting that will be, because government has made so much promises in the education sector, when it comes to housing, when it comes to issues relating to the economy. Some more measures were announced in the 2022 budget. We're unclear. We're not sure as of now if those priority areas that were announced in the budget will be affected, but that is part of the policy measures that was announced by the Finance Minister. So then we also know that there'll be some reduction in the expenditure on all meetings and conferences by 50% effective immediately. That has also been another concern for experts. The fact that in the public sector there are just so many meetings that do not really yield any results for the state. What's the tangible results that we get from all of these meetings and series of talks that we see MDAs and the MMDAs also carry out across the country. The call is that we need to slash that. Government is today accepting with the posture of some experts to cut that down by 50%. So that would no longer happen in the coming days. Then we know that ministers and heads of SOEs, that state-owned enterprises, are to contribute 30% of their salaries from April to December 2022 to the consolidated fund. This is not the first time we are actually seeing one of these measures. We know that this has been done previously in the previous administration of John Dramani Mahama, where some ministers agreed to give some part of their salaries into the consolidated fund. We know that that money was once more disbursed to all of them at the expiration of the term. What would happen to this very contribution? We're not sure about that, but it looks like this is really deep cutting, because this is not just about ministers of state. It's also got to do with heads of state-owned enterprises. They are contributing 30% of their salaries as part of the austerity measure. So what's going to be the implication of this? Well, the sector minister is telling us that he's optimistic that the Akufo-Addo administration has the capacity to turn around the economy. That's the major reason why the finance minister has been laying out all of these plans.
Of revising the 2022 fiscal framework to reflect current developments with a view to go to Parliament to seek approval for the revisions during the mid-year review in July. Government will pursue additional measures to ensure the achievement of the fiscal deficit target of 7.4% of GDP. Ladies and gentlemen, government had already started the new year with spending cuts as Parliament failed to approve key revenue streams at the appropriate time. In January 2022, government announced and immediately began implementing a 20% expenditure cut as part of fiscal stabilization and debt sustainability measures. This has been done through the quarterly expenditure ceiling allotment to MDAs. Quarter 1 allotment is currently in implementation, whilst Quarter 2 allotment will be issued shortly. The ministry has strengthened its expenditure monitoring systems and processes to ensure effective implementation of these measures. In addition, government has decided to take the following measures to ensure the achievement of the fiscal deficit target of 7.4% of GDP for 2022. So, expenditure cutting measures. Discretionary spending is to be further cut by an additional 10%. The Ministry of Finance is currently meeting with MDAs to review their spending plans for the rest of the 3 quarters to achieve the discretionary expenditure cuts. 2, these times call for very efficient use of energy resources. In line with this, there will be a 50% cut in fuel coupon allocations for all political appointees and heads of government institutions, including SOEs, effective 1st February 2022. With immediate effect, government has imposed a complete moratorium on the purchase of imported vehicles for the rest of the year. This will affect all new orders, especially four-wheel drives. We will ensure that the overall effect is to reduce total vehicle purchases by the public sector by at least 50% for the period. Again, with immediate effect, government has imposed a moratorium on all foreign travels except pre-approved critical statutory travels. 5, government will conclude on ongoing measures to eliminate ghost workers from the government payroll by end December 2022. Government will conclude the renegotiations of the energy sector IPP's capacity charges by end of quarter 3 2022 to further reduce excess capacity payments by 20% to generate a total savings of 1.5 billion Ghana cedis.
And thanks for staying with us here on the polls. There's a need for us to, first of all, give you the genesis of all of this, where it started from and how we found ourselves in this situation as an economy. First of all, there's a need for us to get the research background to all of this. First of all, let's get that from Isaac Ofieje, who is with our research desk here at JoyNews. Obviously, a lot of things are happening. We're hearing of new measures that the finance minister has laid out. And all of these things are expected to ensure that there's a rebound in the economy. But we need to track this from the start. Where did we start from?
budget, if you could put this down a bit. For the 2022 budget, you realize that expenditure is pegged at 137.5 billion Ghana cedis.
Right.
Revenue is 100.5 billion cedis, leaving a deficit of 37 billion cedis.
Okay, right. So for the purposes of clarity, what you mean is that these are extracts from the 2022 budget.
Exactly, budget.
And from the 2022 budget, we do know that the first line which you're indicating to us, this expenditure, this accounts for all government activities, expenditure, what they'll be spending in the financial year 2022. So but then they would have to make up for that. There's a need for funding to support the expenditure.
Absolutely.
So that's where we have this.
That's where we have the revenue,
right,
which is 100.5 billion cedis. And then if you should subtract the revenue from the expenditure, it should give you a deficit or a surplus. But in our case, we have a deficit, not a balance, actually, of 37 billion cedis in the fiscal year.
Right.
And now, if you look at the revenue, E-levy is inclusive. E-levy is inclusive, which projected as almost 7 billion cedis. So it means if you are still delaying in passing the E-levy, it means that automatically our deficit has actually automatically increased to somewhere around 40 billion cedis as we speak.
So the 37 billion is what government is on the lookout for right now.
Exactly. Government has to find ways and means to fund the budget deficit of 37 billion.
Right. And I'm sure the question on the minds of a lot of Ghanaians is, how is it that just 37 billion cedis is creating such a huge problem for our economy?
In this situation where we find ourselves in, not just Ghana, but on the global scale, every dollar, every cedi, every billion is important. So how the ways and means you find to to make sure that you are able to cater for your deficits is very important. Now, you just listen to the finance minister saying that as of December 2021, our total debt stock was 351 billion.
0.8 billion.
No, 51 exactly.
Okay, so the 0.8.
Yeah, exactly. So 51 billion, cedis as of December.
That's how much we owe as a nation.
Exactly. The public debt. So that's around 80.1% of the total GDP of this country.
Is there an increase generally?
Oh, yeah, there is about 2%. Now there's still the big IMF dilemma, because the people are still contemplating as to whether these measures outlined by the finance minister are as whether they are robust enough, because most of them are short term or either medium term. So if you look at the borrowing plan, that's the issuance calendar for the first quarter of this year, government intends to borrow 24.5 billion cedis from the domestic market.
Right.
Exactly.
That's the domestic market.
The domestic market. This is how much government intends to borrow from the domestic market. Now, the next slide, I'll show you the breakdown of government's intends to do with this money. But in February, we intend to borrow 9.3. In January 9.3, February 7.55, and March 7.65. Now, the next slide, you realize that out of this 24 billion government wants to borrow from the domestic market, a whopping 20.7 billion will be as rollover, meaning that loans that have matured, government is going to use this 20.7 billion.
In fact,
will be left
a significant portion of the amount we're going for.
The government will be left with just 3.8
billion to work with. So even the amount we are going for, we use that to service another debt.
Exactly.
That's how bad the situation is. So all we're left with is 3.8 billion, and that's why government is critically pushing for interventions such as the E-levy and all of that.
You have a deficit of almost 40 billion.
Yes.
And then the first quarter is very crucial, because at this moment, every billion cedi is important. So the first quarter, if you are borrowing 24 from the domestic market, which has a probability to crowd out the private sector, and then you are using a whopping 20.7 billion as rollovers, and you just have 3.8 billion cedis to spend on other things. It's a question that government has to answer.
I say, Kofi Eji, I'm grateful that you've been able to give us all of these updates. It's time now for us to explore the options some more. Fortunate to have Dr. Williams Pepra, Chief Finance Officer at the Valley View University, join us via Zoom this afternoon. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. And also Dr. Steve Mantiel is former chairperson of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Dr. Pepra, let me start off with you. So, having listened to the finance minister, are we on track to getting the economy, on its good standing?
Thank you very much for calling me and your viewers. I think that listening to the finance minister, I see that there is hope. The hope that I have is that in the short possible term, the measures that have been aligned, I see that is going to bring the confidence back from our international partners, and that is why the minister is confident to say that there's something in the offing of about $2 billion where they are going to raise some funds. But I'm also happy, especially because I am in a private university setup where I am the chief finance officer, so I know how to finance university. When the minister spoke that, I mentioned that the public tertiary universities are now, the workers there are now going to be removed from government payroll, and then the universities or tertiary universities will be paying themselves. They are going to use their IGF to pay themselves. That alone, just looking at the math, that alone is what is saving the minister almost 1.5 billion cedis for this year. But unfortunately, the minister did not give a timeline to it. With all the measures, he was very specific with timelines. But when it came to that particular announcement, he only mentioned that this is an action that is going to be done by the Ministry of Finance. I'm sure the Ministry of Education is aware, especially where we saw that lecturers or university faculty went on strike for a very long period beginning of this year, which affected reopening. The wage bill on the line of tertiary financing is very huge. I know that most of the big public universities in the country now are operating like the private universities, but then still government pays them their salaries. One government is going to give them only a fixed amount of money to operate. It is going to put us all in the same basket, and we will compete with them. So it gives me some hope that this action alone is going to save the country by 1.5 billion cedis. If you look at the measures that government mentioned, the rest are on the line of, say, political appointee sacrificing. Government is focusing on operational efficiency in terms of reducing or unnecessary expenditure items like conferences. And also, I was also very happy to hear the minister say that they are going to prioritize capital expenditure items. The minister said that they were going to focus on ongoing projects. What it means is that government is admitting that their Agenda 111, the hospital projects, may have to be deferred for a period because currently there are a lot of projects which were started by the previous government which are hanging, and they also have started some projects which they may also have to address.
Let's talk about the slashing the salaries of government appointees, particularly the heads of state-owned enterprises. Is that a feasible option, particularly when we know that the institutions themselves have challenges which the government has to tackle in terms of revenue leakages? Why then focus on the income of persons heading those institutions?
So I think the fact is that the government appointees must show some sacrifice. Because as you remember, Professor Adair mentioned that their sacrifice of 25% would be a sign that they are ready to make sure that the economy runs.
Precisely why I'm asking the question, because if you have a government appointee slash their salaries by some 30%, and yet within the institutions within which they find themselves suffering seriously in terms of public accountability, and then ensuring that we block the revenue leakages, that will come to naught. It's as though you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, isn't it?
I understand what you are saying. That
right.
They may find other means to get their 30% back.
Yeah,
that is what we are trying to say. But I'm sure that as it was mentioned, I think someone has a question about implementation. This is the time that government may have to give us the hope on the line of being disciplined. If government is able to ensure that there is discipline, then the confidence we have is that government may have to monitor their procurement processes to make sure that these appointees don't get it back in another form. So this is what I think that government must focus on. What the measures they will put in place to ensure that government is disciplined to do it. In my earlier conversations in the past, I've mentioned that government should go to IMF, and I've been always using the word discipline. So now that they have come out with the measures, the next one is the discipline to implement it. If we fail, then I still stand by my advice that we need to go to IMF, because with IMF, we're able to discipline ourselves. So the implementation strategy is very, very important.
And this is the point the finance minister says some prudent measures have to be put in place in terms of internal and homegrown solutions, including the controversial subject of the E-levy. He talks about the fact that Parliament would have to collaborate with government at this moment. How crucial is this issue of E-levy to averting this whole return to the IMF? Is it that dire?
And we have noted that the E-levy, as I predicted, that government needed it to go and borrow in future by collateralizing it, which has been admitted by the Minister of Transport. So government really need the E-levy. Let me do some analysis. I think you started with that one. So the deficit is 37 billion. 37 billion. This action or the policies which have been just announced by government is only going to reduce the 37 billion by 3.5 billion. So what it means is that virtually there's about say 33.5 billion still left. If government is still able to raise the 2 billion to come in as revenue, the deficit will reduce to 14.4 billion.
Right, and just hold on for me, Dr. Pepper. Let's also bring in Dr. Steve Manteal, formerly in charge of PIAC, who is also joining this conversation. In fact, he made an earlier call that one of the flagship programs, the free senior high school policy, has to be re-looked at, considering how we're using revenue that we're generating from oil proceeds. He's also joining us now on this conversation. Thank you, Doc, for your time. So the finance minister has spoken. He's not touched deeply on government flagship projects, which means that government will continue to protect all of these policies, including the issue of the free SHS policy. But then the question now is, how do we maximize funding from our oil revenue to also help in the economic challenges that we're facing now?
Well, I think it's good news that the flagship programs, most of which are social expenditures, were not touched. But it does not take away the need to take a look at the sustainability of these flagship programs in terms of financing and the pressures it puts on government's own budget. If you look at the free SHS, I think that it's a bit onerous to put the funding on debt through revenue streams. Tax revenue on oil is taking as much as 1.3 billion Ghana cedis a year. This is quite onerous, and I think that if we are not careful, it gets to a point when we are not able to derive much from the oil sector. It can create serious problems for the sustainability of the free SHS. So we need to begin to see how we can maybe sustainably finance the program, and that will mean diversifying the revenue streams that come to finance the free SHS. I make the point that in the year of introduction of the free SHS, that was in 2017, Cocoa Board alone had about 13,000 students on this scholarship program. We were so much in a hurry that it did not occur to us to settle with Cocoa Board and get Cocoa Board to contribute its budget for the 13,000 students to the government's resources for financing the free SHS. And that would require the creation of a certain pool of funds. Let's say, for instance, at the time we had Get Fund, so you could restructure Get Fund to receive this extra revenue from Cocoa Board. There are other corporate entities, Anglo-Wood, Ashanti, Goldfields, Newmont, Unilever, lots of companies also had scholarship programs for support. In fact, GNPC also has scholarship program for second cycle education. So if we had sat down, we could have gotten all these corporate bodies to channel their resources for financing their scholarship program to complement what government has, so that it does not put undue pressure on government's scanty resources.
Right, and I guess the question is, how much of a difference will that make to the Ghanaian economy?
Well, the difference it makes is that it frees up some of the monies, the 1.2, 1.3 billion that goes currently to finance the PSH from the oil sector, and also the other portion, which is about 3/4 that comes from government taxes. Once you diversify the financing sources, what you do is that you limit the pressures on the two main sources of funding. And again, it actually safeguards the project, the program, because then when you fail to realize one particular revenue stream, it does not unduly jeopardize the program in its entirety. Currently, we have only 2 revenue streams. So if one fails to come through, then you have a serious problem on your hand. The children will be home when they are supposed to be in school.
Right. And Doc, we need to wrap up on this conversation, but just your take on what we've heard, that some those in charge of the state-owned enterprises are to slash their salaries by some 30%. That's the indication we're getting. Are you confident that that measure will be forcefully applied by the executive? Because the challenge is we're not even able to monitor that carefully, and we don't know if government will be transparent enough to give us the details on that.
Well, that depends on the government's own political will to carry out what it says it wants to do. But I don't think that is where the problem is. We need to cut government's bureaucracy down to the size it was in 2016. What do I mean by this? Look, since 2016, let's say starting from 2017, we have created deputy director positions, sometimes 2, 3, in all the state-owned enterprises, public parastatals. That is not good, because with every additional position you create comes with huge expenditure outlay. So I think that government will need to, if they are really minded to cut costs, then they have to cut the bureaucracy down to its former size. That's a way to free up resources to do other things for the country.
We need to go, but are you hopeful anything will change soon with regard to the Ghanaian economy?
Well, government has shown some level of goodwill to kind of cut public expenditure, but it doesn't go far enough. I think government could do more. Now, whether or not it would implement the measures it has actually laid out, I think time will tell. I am not too optimistic, but I will give the government the benefit of the doubt.
Let's see what then happens. Dr. Steve Manteo, I'm grateful that you've been able to join us here on the JoyNews channel. Dr. Pepra, your final words on this as we wrap up on this conversation.
So thank you. So as I've mentioned, now we want to see the disciplinary action of the government. This is the time. You have to prove to us that, yes, we will not go to IMF. The programs we have been lined up are always in line with what IMF will ask us to do. Cut some costs which they have laid down. Also on employment, you remember that the minister mentioned that the ghost names, they are going to make sure that they are removed. In terms of revenue generation, the E-levy is still hanging. Tax filing, government mentioned that mobile application for tax filing is going to be rolled out very soon, which means that a lot of us will have to make sure that we become tax compliant and we pay our due taxes. But then we expect government to also make sure that what is due us is given to us. The 15 pesos given to us for only 3 months is not enough. If you ask me, the 15 pesos on the disc or reduction on fuel petroleum is not enough. Government is now asking the OMCs to also reduce their margins. They are in to do business.
Right.
So we want government to do more. I was thinking that government may look at the PAYE, pay as you earn structure, and come out with some on the banks. The 5%. The government may do something about it, but because they need more revenue, government has not gone on that.
This is the time, in fact, there are calls for programs with subsidy to be checked. You just said, Dr. Steve Mantea will talk about the free senior high school policy, for instance. Are you also of the view that something needs to be done about this policy to free up fiscal space for government to act?
For me, I've been talking about NAPCO. That program alone, every month we are spending close to 1 billion cedis on people on that program, but they are not productive enough. You
so mean NAPCO personnel are not productive? Yes. They're not productive enough. What we have, we have Grow Ghana. We have so many modules. Persons who've been sent into public office.
Just mention to me which one have you seen that is adding onto what we have? We have not. So if for me, if those with Ghana Revenue Authorities, if we were going to ask them to go to Ashanti region, where the tax collection according to the minister is 1.3% contribution, if we ask them to go out and make sure we give them some electronic devices to make sure that everybody pays his taxes in Ashanti region, that alone will increase our taxes more than the E-levy.
Right.
But we have people we are paying, but they are not working.
So we'll see about that. But we're so grateful that you've been able to spend some time with us as we continue with our special coverage on the Finance Minister's address on challenges facing Ghana's economy. Don't forget that there's also a revision in the margins which are expected to reduce fuel prices. Prices of petrol by some 1.6% and then diesel by 1.4%. That's according to the sector minister, who's hopeful that the measures taken will strengthen the currency and also help further stabilize the prices at the pumps. Here you have it on your screens, excerpts of the details that the finance minister pointed to. There'll be a reduction in the margins in petroleum price build-up by a total of some 50 pesos per litre with effect from 1st of April. And the details are here. You have the boss margin being reduced by 2 pesos per litre. And that's the Unified Petroleum Pricing Fund will also be reduced by 9 pesos per litre. And then you have the fuel making margin, which is also being reduced by some 1 peso per litre. And then the PDM is equally being reduced by 3 pesos per litre. But all of this, as the finance minister is indicating, will lead to some significant drops at the pumps in terms of fuel prices when it comes to petrol and diesel. Here's the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, announcing the measures a while ago.
Is influenced largely by the rising crude oil price on the international market and the exchange rate depreciation. Though the rising crude oil prices should have been to our benefit on net basis, Ghana's import of petroleum products amounts to 5.2 times the value of proceeds from its crude oil exports. In 2021, for example, we exported $3.947 billion of crude, of which Ghana's portion was $513 million. However, we $119 of crude and finished products. So the purported windfall gain in foreign exchange is quite a mirage. From January to date, the average export price of diesel and petrol have increased by 57% and 45% respectively. Unlike in other countries where the hike in crude oil prices and exchange rate volatility are leading to shortages in supply of petroleum products, government is implementing measures to guarantee constant supply of petroleum products. To mitigate the impact of the rising price of petroleum products at the pump for the next 3 months, government has decided to reduce margins in petroleum price build-up by a total of 15 pesos per litre with effect from 1st April. The details are as follows. Boss margin reduced by 2 pesos per litre. Unified Petroleum Pricing Fund margin reduced by 9 pesos per litre. Fuel margin reduced by 1 peso per litre. Primary distribution margin reduced by 3 pesos per litre. Ladies and gentlemen, these reductions in margins are expected to reduce prices of petrol by 1.6% and diesel by 1.4%. We anticipate that the measures taken to strengthen the currency will help further stabilize the prices at the pump.
Well, so that's the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. So what's the implication for transport fares? Obviously, the road users, particularly the transport unions, have served notice that they will increase transport fares in the coming days, but given the reduction and possible reduction in the coming days, what's going to be the implication for their planned action? Joining us now is Samuel Amwa, National Communications Member of GPRTU, Mother Union for all the transport unions. So it's a good time to be talking to you, Samuel. So you have the Finance Minister indicates that at least we'll have a significant reduction, 1.6%. What's your take on that? Will that mean that the memorandum that you signed with government will still hold and that prices will not go up anymore?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to your cherished viewers. And as you realize, you know, when we had a meeting with the transport minister, the agreement was that when the fuel prices goes up to 10%, by then when we were giving the 15%, but then the fuel price was 7.99.
Right.
Then the calculation was that at the moment we hit 8.8 and above, then hopefully there is the need for the transporters to also, you know, seek for an upward adjustment of our transport fares. But as it stands now, if I'm not lying, now Shell sells at about 10.6, I think 10.6, you know, cedis per liter on a pump. Then I think Well is around 10.4 or something. So should they reduce those 15 pesos from this? I don't think it will not come down below the 8.8.
But I mean, this is 1.6% we're talking about. Well, it's projected. We haven't seen the effects at the pumps yet. But government is so confident. Look at the margins, and that's part of the proposals that you tabled before the Transport Ministry, asking that some key components of the taxes that we have on petroleum, it should be slashed. That has been done. So it meets your demands, isn't it?
Yes. Well, the thing is, you know, we are running the business with mainly the petroleum product. It's one of the major components that we use. So the thing is, now, government is trying to do its best to bring the petroleum prices down.
Right.
But our question is, if it doesn't come down to the level that will also, you know, help our business, then I don't think we also, you know, have to go by not, you know, increasing our
I'm sorry for cutting through. So what do you mean to tell us that 1.6% is not significant enough?
Yeah, it's not significant. It is significant enough because all we think is, you know, reducing it by 1.6 will not come down below the 8.8 that we are expecting.
So what would this mean? You still go ahead and charge the new transport fares that you had threatened?
Yes, yes. What is going to happen is, should they reduce it? Okay, at the moment, now fuel prices around 10.6 to 11 cedis a liter.
That's right.
That is why quite recently we proposed a 15% upward adjustment again. But should it come down a little bit, as the minister has rightly said, then what is going to happen is, although we will seek for an upward adjustment on the fares, but it will not go up to the 15% that we are talking about. Are we getting my point? So the thing is, should it come down below the 8.8, then I don't think the transporters will also go ahead by seeking for, you know, lorry fare increment, because even by the time we were giving the 15%, even the drivers were even complaining bitterly that they were thinking that you know, the 15% increment is too small for us, considering where the fuel price was, considering the spare parts and other components. So now that it has gone up to this to this extent, and now government is coming in to bring or to see to it that it will be reduced a little bit. If it comes down,
I'm sorry, but just give us some clarity. Are you saying that you now want a 15% increment? Because initially the coalition that you formed was demanding 30% hike in the transport fare. So what you're now asking for is the 30%.
No, No, from the beginning, we asked for 30%.
Right.
Then the government came in to give us 15%. By the time we were giving the 15%, the fuel price was 7.99. Then the agreement is that should it go up, if in case it has been increased up to 8.8, that is the 10% threshold, 8.8 and above, then definitely we also have to go in for another increment. And that is why now the fuel price is around 10.6 to 11 cedis. It has even go beyond, what the 10% threshold. That is why we also did our calculation and we came out to 15%.
Okay.
We wrote to the ministries that we had wanted to increase our lorry fares by 15% based on the current the current prices.
So the 1.6. So I mean, assuming without admitting that the 1.6 works, what it will mean is that you will still go ahead anyway and increase the transport.
Should the 1.6 works, we only have to do our calculations, check if it has come down below the 8.8. Then we don't have to,
But I mean, let's do that quickly. Where we are now, a 1% reduction in the 11 cedis margin would not change anything. You agree? So that would mean that the memorandum has been breached. So transport fares will still go up in the coming days. That's what you're telling us.
Definitely. Else our businesses will collapse. Definitely, it has to go up. So if the government doesn't want the transport fares to go up again, then they still have to do something about it, because we can't run a business to lose all the time. Our drivers are losing. Our businesses are going down because the major component we use is the petroleum product. And we can't go and buy it at a higher price and take a smaller fare. It will collapse our business. It's not like we are not thinking about the ordinary Ghanaians. We do. But this is our business that we are talking about.
But at least be fair to Ghanaians. I mean, government is cushioning you in these hard times. Why not wait for some time before you go ahead and increase the prices further?
We have been very fair. We have been very fair. Like, I said it earlier on that by the time we were giving 13% some time ago, up to when we were giving the 15%, by then the fuel price, they increased it up to about 35 to 36%. And if we want to go strictly by the 10% margin, that the 10% threshold that we were using, then we should have even increased it by 3 times or beyond. But because of the way, we also think about the ordinary Ghanaians, we also think about how the business will go and all that. That is why we were still, talking to the government to do something about it. So by the time we sent those we sent those petitions to the government that they should reduce the taxes. But then, should they did that, I don't think by then we'll increase the lorry fares. But looking at where it is now, looking at where the fuel price is now, if they reduce it by the 1.6, it will not, bring any change that will cause us not to increase our lorry fares.
All right then, Samuel Ama, I'm grateful that you've been able to join us here on The Pulse. There's a need for us to also follow developments that are happening in Parliament. The Finance Ministry is actually hopeful that the E-levy will go through, but there's more action happening where minority has been reacting to the Finance Minister's presentation. Kwesi Parker-Wilson is joining us now from Parliament, giving us updates on what's happening. So Parker, what more do we know? Parker, if you can hear me, I'm asking, what has been the reaction from the minority on this?
Well, so, Blessed, the minority in Parliament has today has about the measures put in place by the Finance Minister as far as austerity measures are concerned, particularly back from the economic cycle. They are saying that they are not adequate enough, and then they don't think that all the measures that they put across will achieve the intended purpose. There were 35 billion, 20 billion, that hasn't been done. And so it is not feasible or not achievable, the things that the Finance Minister is saying. So that has been the concern. Again, the Finance Minister talked about the E-levy. The minority is clear that as for the E-levy, they are not supporting the E-levy today, tomorrow, anytime it comes into the floor. And so we should forget about the E-levy that he he's talking about that, well, Parliament has an assurance from Parliament that the E-levy will be approved for Parliament or for government to generate some revenue. That would happen. On the matter of the free senior high school, the minority that believes that it is important for us to have a national on the free senior high school policy. We believe that the point at which at the primary level or at the junior high school level, where every student is passed into the senior high school, is not competitive enough, and that education must be competitive.
We don't have to invest in grammar and mathematics when we are not really investing in the people or in the student. And so that he should ensure that it is very competitive, and so there should be a national conversation on the free senior high school. And one important thing, Blessed, is the toll boats. The minority leader has been making the point that since the cessation of the tolls, I mean somewhere last year, government has lost substantial revenue. And as a matter of fact, if we are looking at the revenue loss, these revenues could have been channeled into other areas. So his proposal is that with immediate effect, government should reinstate the toll booths or the collection of tolls so that they can generate some money from there in order to show up or cushion.
And just to get some clarity on that.
Those are the things that the minority leader Haruna Dusa has been saying, essentially making the point that the measures put in place by the finance minister is not adequate enough to deal with the current economic crisis that we are in.
Right, and Parker, help us with this. The reason why the finance ministry had to put a hold on the toll booth is that government was going to go ahead with the implementation of the E-levy. Now, the finance minister is saying we need the collaboration of Parliament to pass this. What has been the reaction to that?
Well, so the reaction is quite simple. The minority leader is clear in his mind that for that collaboration, government will not get. And it goes without saying that for them, as a matter of principle, they have resolved to reject the E-levy anytime it comes to the floor of the House. And because of them, government was forced to now engage stakeholders. You see the town hall meetings on the E-levy. And so whether or not there has been engagement, the E-levy, as a matter of principle, the 137 NDC MPs are going to vote against it. That one, he has no doubt in his mind that they will do so. So unless the NPP has their numbers in Parliament to ensure that the E-levy is approved. And for now, as we know, 2 of their members are still not within the jurisdiction. Of course, one has taken ill and one is out of the jurisdiction. So it will be a Herculean task for the government, I must say, on how they would approve this E-levy.
But what's easy?
This morning, a while ago, there was conversation about the Asin North MP.
I was just about coming to that.
Believe that.
Yeah. I was just about coming to that, Parker. If you can hear me, I was just about coming to that where, of course, we know that it's a numbers game now. The finance minister says, hopefully, if we pray together, the E-levy will go through by the end of March. We know that the issue of James Jachi-Kwesian has come up strongly on the floor of the House, which has implications for the possible passage of the E-levy. Help us understand the dynamics here. What's the number looking like?
Yeah, so that is why the minority guys are saying that the move by the NDC to get...
Well, Parker Wilson joining us live there from Parliament to give us some updates on what's happening. We'll return in our subsequent bulletins. This is The Pulse. Stay with us. We'll return after this break. And you're welcome back to The Pulse. Now, today, as we do know it, is the World Tuberculosis Day, and the Ghana Health Service says it is concerned about the acceptance and widespread smoking of shisha in the country. There is a misconception that shisha are not as harmful as cigarettes, but the British Heart Foundation says an hour-long shisha session can actually be equivalent to smoking more than 100 cigarette sticks. Greater Accra Regional TB Coordinator at the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Farida Abdullahi, told head of the health desk here at JoyNews, Fred Smith, that the service is worried that the consumption of the substance is adding to the many factors that predisposes Ghanaians to the deadly tuberculosis disease.
Nowadays, smoking has become quite is on the increase in the country, especially with vaping and the shisha and all that. So smoking also increases your risk of developing active TB disease.
About this smoking as a risk factor, what are the numbers? What information do you have about the increase in smoking?
Yeah, so I don't have exact figures as to the numbers that are increasing nowadays. But when you pick up TB clients, especially with the males, and some of them have smoking as a risk factor. So that is what I can say for now. I don't have exact figures. So smoking, and then malnutrition, like I mentioned, and then also diabetes, lifestyle diseases.
Yeah, I want us to stay on the smoking. So
okay.
Which of the smoke items did you find more? Is it shisha? Is it cigarette? Is it the other things that people smoke? Which of them?
Yes, so for now we've not quantified exactly what the people smoke to get them predisposed to TB, but smoking as a whole, because what it does is that it affects your respiratory tract, and so once you inhale in the bacteria, the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which is the organism that causes TB, then you are more predisposed to getting active TB disease. But as to the exact numbers, I don't have that.
You don't have. So
yes.
What would you advise that the state does so we're able to control this?
So for now, I think as a country, we have put in place a policy of no smoking in public areas. And what I know, what our healthcare workers also do is that we do school health. So we go and give talks on how to maintain health generally in schools, all schools across the country. We have our community health workers and our health promotion officers who do that. And then smoking is usually one of the things they talk about. We also do community outreaches from time to time, and then we have topics we discuss during such outreaches. So smoking is usually one of the things we talk about.
Obviously, that's the concern of the Ghana Health Service, but joining us now to have a conversation on this is Kwame Efutu. He is the head of monitoring and evaluation at the National TB program at the Ghana Health Service. Doc, it's such a good time to have you in studio.
Thank you.
So we're celebrating the World TB Day. A lot of people are still out there not knowing what the implications are when they go to the nightclubs and still just puff shisha. So tell us about the health hazards, first of all, and how harmful it could be to you as an individual.
Good. So thank you for having me. We actually commemorating the day. We are not actually celebrating. Commemorating in the sense that in 1882,
right,
one Dr. Robert Koch discovered the bacilli or the germ that causes tuberculosis.
Okay.
Ever since, we try to put this on the agenda. I mean, reminding everybody that everybody is at
risk. So it's much more a day for creation of awareness.
Right. And these awareness creations extends across the whole year. So the climax is on the 24th of March, as we did today.
Okay.
But it continues.
So it wasn't a one-day activity where maybe you just observe the day and then we move on?
Not at all.
Right.
Actually, the climax is on 24th, which is today.
Okay.
So beyond today, the activities continue. I mean, you see people in the community talking about tuberculosis, radio stations, and all over the place. Now, you ask about the harmful effect of smoking. It's one of the lifestyle factors or reasons that predispose everybody to respiratory diseases.
Okay.
In terms of numbers, it's difficult for us to say that as a result of smoking, X number of our patients
suffering
for tuberculosis. But we know that it's a risk factor. She also mentioned diabetes. alcoholism, anything that would reduce your immunity, predispose you to tuberculosis. I mean, so substance abuse and even persons living with HIV. I mean, you know the risk.
So the fixation should not just be on smoking?
No, not at all. I mean, even there are other environmental factors such as overcrowding. I mean, if you live in a congested area with poor ventilation, I mean, poor air circulation, that's a very big risk. I mean, all you need is to have somebody in that space who persistently cough. Each time the person coughs is most likely emitting a bacilli from the lungs. Okay, and with a long exposure, you are likely to get infected. But let me first say that if you take the adult population of Ghana, 50% of us have already been exposed to the bacilli that causes tuberculosis.
And that's the most shocking news I've heard all day. The fact that we're all exposed and we don't even seem to know that is the situation in which we find ourselves. Yeah. What's accounting for that?
The main reason why we didn't know is that at the moment we are very fit. I mean, probably you and I are actively engaged.
Walking about.
We earn some relatively good salary, so we're able to feed well. I mean, take good care of ourselves for now. And again, probably beyond that, we live relatively in a decent environment, so the risk is reduced. But as you age and when your organs become compromised, then the risk of getting tuberculosis increases. I mean, so you find that in the age of 65 plus population, you find, if you look at the proportion of our patients, it's very high in that group. But of course, just that their numbers are not large. Our population is predominantly a young one.
Yeah, youthful population.
Youthful population.
Right. So what you mean to say is that you could have a situation where you can carry maybe the disease for a very long time without detecting it. Is there a possibility, scientifically speaking, is there a possibility like
that? Yes, because the fact that you are exposed to the germ doesn't mean that you catch the disease. There are a lot of other things that go on within your body.
Right.
The body has a mechanism in the first place to even fight infection. So until such time that the infection override the body's ability to fight disease, you do not get the full-blown disease. Yeah.
So for instance, how long could one go without noticing it?
You certainly cannot put a fixed period on it, because there are other factors that come into play. We mentioned immunity. I mean, if Nigeria was the fiasco, I mean, God forbid, if you have HIV, certainly your immune system will go down.
So, yeah.
If at any time you get cancer, your immune system will begin to go down. Diabetes. So there are other factors that come to play. So the most important thing is that you try to, as much as possible, to live a healthy lifestyle. So one of the things we are also doing to support such populations that may be infected but don't know is that anytime you have a TB patient diagnosed, we try as much as possible to get in touch with all his or her contacts. Anybody that is in contact with him. For now, our contact predominantly is defined as household contacts.
Okay.
So we screen all those persons. Those we think have a higher risk, we test them for TB. If you have TB, you are treated just like the patient who was initially diagnosed. Those who do not have TB, we give them what we call a TB preventive therapy. Simply because that they have been exposed to an active case. It's too likely that they are infected. But at that point, they are not showing signs of disease.
So this pretty much works like COVID. I don't know if it's fair to do that comparison, though.
You are 101% right. Tuberculosis and TB, tuberculosis and COVID.
Right.
In fact, TB is an elder cousin. They share same symptoms.
Wow.
If you have TB, you cough. COVID, you cough. Fever, elevated body temperature.
Right.
Either way. The difference between the cough of a TB case and a COVID patient is that COVID cough is dry. But in TB, it's productive in the sense that you produce phlegm, what we call sputum. Then again, you need a long exposure to get TB. You are talking of 12 weeks. It could be a year, it could be 2 years, a long exposure. And the incubation period could be 1 year plus. Incubation means that from the time you are exposed to the bacilli or the disease-causing organism, and when you show signs of the disease, as the incubation period, it could be as short as 1 year and as long as forever.
Right.
Now, in COVID, you and I know that it is 2 to 14 days.
Okay.
You begin to show signs of that disease. So that's the main distinction between COVID and then tuberculosis.
Right.
They have the same symptoms.
So all you need to do is to ensure that your immune system is active, is working, functioning properly, so you are able to contain or even prevent the disease.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, so the single best way of preventing the disease is to make sure that all who are affected are treated. What do I mean? If I am a TB patient, the best I can do to protect you, or you can do to protect yourself, is to make sure I receive treatment, and that I go through logically to the end of the treatment. Once I am cured, the risk of infecting you
will
is
not be
zero.
Right.
Okay. So society has a responsibility to ensure that all TB patients are treated.
I'm glad that you're raising that point. There are those who say that in terms of regulation, this is the time that we need to crack the whip. For instance, we need the Ghana Health Service, for instance, to go out, check pubs and nightclubs where people, for instance, use shisha. I'm sure that we just heard that from the interview. There are calls that, well, why not enforce the preventive side so that we don't even accumulate a number of cases that will pose danger to our society? What's the Ghana Health Service going to do about these nightclubs and places and pubs that allow persons to smoke shisha in the open?
Yeah, I think she also mentioned that there are acts or laws.
Okay.
I mean, for example, you cannot smoke in a public space. Okay, so there's a definition for public space. So in pubs or other places, they may be deemed as public, but that's another, call it, the spectrum, which probably is also commercial. So at best, what Ghana Health Service does and would continue to do is to educate you and I, so that.
So what you're telling me is there's a challenge enforcing the conditions within the Act.
No, I wouldn't say so.
Right.
I mean, so the definition is, what is a public space?
Are you having difficulties as a service identifying what that public space is and why you're not able to crack down on these places?
I don't think that is a challenge, identifying what we mean by public space. Typically, if you enter any government space, you cannot smoke. The systems are there to make sure you don't smoke. Even in some pubs, there are designated areas for smoking. Okay. Now, you see, implementing laws comes in various phases. The first thing you want to do is that you have an informed society. Then, of course, for lack of a better word, I will use a deviant. Others who, no matter what you do, I mean, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah, and that's why there's the provision of the law to deal with them.
Yeah.
So why are you not dealing with them anyway? That's what I'm interested in. Because you're educating, we're educating the public as you speak. There are many out there sitting down and saying, well, I'm innocent. And in fact, science has proven that even when you're smoking, those who inhale, I mean, passers-by are those who are mostly affected from the fumes that we see. Right, precisely. So if that's the case, then we should be concerned about enforcing the preventive measures. Are there some plans in place, things that you'll be rolling out to deal with these things?
Certainly, even as a program, it's one of the things that we consistently do. I mean, if you look at the focus of the World TB Day, we are talking of good lung health. What it means is that preserve your lung. Don't do A, B, C, D. Don't live in a congested environment. Make sure you don't smoke. Don't also be a passive smoker. as far as we can go as a unit or an umbrella of Ghana Health Service. Now, applying the law, of course, you know the dimensions it goes. I mean, the police service would come in collaboration with the Ghana Health Service. And for the World TB Day, that is not the focus. It's part of what we do regularly. Now, so by the World TB Day, what we are trying to bring to the fore is that take good care of yourself. Don't smoke. Don't engage in all the other the vices of lifestyle. But beyond that, if you fall ill, anytime you feel, no, this is not me, walk to the nearest hospital, health center. They will screen you. They'll ask you questions, and don't be evasive.
Right.
Don't be evasive. I use the word don't be evasive because of stigma associated with COVID and tuberculosis. People come to the OPDs. You ask all the relevant questions. The answer is no, 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 no. I don't cough. Then the person sits behind, and all of a sudden begins to cough. It's a physiological reaction. You can't entirely stop it. Now, so the earlier we are able to pick the patients and put them on treatment, the lower the risk to the larger society. So we are encouraging everybody to, if you feel you are sick, go to the hospital. And again, we also encourage society, community, don't stigmatize TB patients or COVID patients. It's just one of those diseases. Because one, if you stigmatize them, then they are even reluctant to go to the hospital. When they fall ill, they'll go through all other places, the prayer camps, chemical shops. And by the time they come to the hospital, then they are getting to a very advanced stage of disease. Let me share this data with you, or the information. Right. If you take all the TB patients that we put on treatment, about 3 of them die each day. So 365 days times 3, we are talking about almost 1,200 patients that we lose. Some of them, we lose them because they do not come to the hospital early enough for the system to diagnose them and put them on treatment. So they come at advanced stage of disease. You see it. Now, this is among those who come to the hospital and are diagnosed. If you extend this to the general population, it's about 42 persons a day. So in a year, we are losing about 15,500 Ghanaians or people living in Ghana, most probably due to tuberculosis. We are not able to find all the TB cases. WHO estimates that if you take 100,000 persons in Ghana, 143 of them should have tuberculosis. So that amounts to about 44,000 TB patients each year. Each year. Right. Now, what are we doing? Before COVID, we were able to find about a third of these patients, about 15,000. We're doing 14,500, 14,800.
But now you want to scale it up?
Because of COVID, it nosedived. Because
so it's even decreasing?
It decreased. Right. I mean, in 2021, we are talking about a little over 13,000, precisely 13,322. Why? Because of the stigma associated with COVID and TB. Right. People come to the OPD. One of the things we are doing is that at the OPDs, everybody is asked questions related to symptoms of COVID and tuberculosis. Right. So that we can early detect and put them on treatment. But there are 2 reasons. Because of the stigma and I mean basically
and the era in which we find ourselves.
And the era in which we find ourselves. So people are evasive. Right. So we are not able to pick them early and put them on treatment.
Right. That's why we need you to just step out if you are not feeling well and make sure that you get tested. Today is the World TB Day, and we're grateful that you've been able to join us in studio here. But don't forget that this is still the polls. We will be, first of all, checking what's happening around the world. And don't forget that our eyes are still on the Ghana-Nigeria match. We'll talk about that shortly. But let's, first of all, take you to Germany, where sanctions on Russia has actually been biting the economies of many nations, with implications on the country's energy sector. Thomas Sparrow, our partner with DW, is joining us now and will tell us more of what's happening there in Europe. So, Thomas, thank you for joining us. First of all, why is this issue of banning Russian gas and oil imports so controversial in the EU?
Essentially because there are European countries, in particular Germany, but not only Germany, that are reliant or dependent on Russian energy. Not only Russian gas, but also Russian coal or Russian oil. And that means that if the EU decides to ban Russian energy imports, that would not only affect Russia, but it would also affect European Union countries very heavily. In fact, the German climate minister Robert Habeck stressed in an interview a few days ago that if that decision were taken without necessary precautions, it could indeed cause, for example, here in Germany, mass unemployment, it could cause poverty, and it could also cause shortages. So that's why essentially European Union countries are now discussing whether to ban Russian energy imports and what the concrete impact of that would be in the different European Union countries. So far, when we talk about sanctions coming from Europe towards Russia, the EU has indeed shown unity, but in this particular case, it is certainly controversial and there are different views, and that has essentially to do not only with the impact that would have on Russia, but what impact it would also have on different national economies.
How is Germany in particular planning to cut the dependence on Russian energy?
So when we talk about Germany, around 55% of imports when it comes to gas come from Russia. So it's certainly a high figure there. And as such, Germany is now trying to diversify its energy supplies on the one hand, and on the other hand, continue with its project towards renewable energies. And as such, Germany's climate minister Robert Habeck was not only recently in Norway trying to find their compromises to reduce precisely Germany's dependence on Russian energy, but also in the last few days in Qatar and in the UAE, where Germany also signed specific deals, in particular German companies, with those regions to try, on the one hand, and get LNG, so liquefied natural gas. Germany indeed is in fact planning to build 2 LNG terminals in the northern part of the country, but also when it comes to renewables, in particular with green hydrogen. It is not something that's going to change immediately, so you won't have from one day to the next a change here in Germany. It is rather a process, but it is a process that Germany, and in particular the German government, is certainly starting that process to reduce its dependence on Russian energy.
What do citizens say? How concerned are they about higher prices and possible cuts?
So there is certainly concern about those two issues, about higher prices, about energy cuts, but it's also clear that Germans are prepared to suffer economically if that means that peace can be achieved in Ukraine, if that means that Russians invasion of Ukraine can actually stop. And this is something that has been revealed in various polls. A majority of Germans are in favor of the measures that have been taken, even if that means that at home there will be problems. And that is in line actually with what the German government has been saying. We've heard from different German officials, in particular German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, say that Germany is indeed prepared to suffer economically. The big question here is to what extent Germany is prepared to suffer economically, and what will that mean also when it comes to public support if the war continues and if Germans indeed begin to suffer not only on the short term but also on the medium and long term.
Sparrow there with our partners DW. This is the polls. We return for sports. And many of us are on the lookout for this. In the next 24 hours, Ghana will clash with Nigeria for a spot in the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. Well, for Ghana, this game transcends just a match. It is also a battle for supremacy and probably a subtle way to end our Ghana versus Nigeria jollof war. Now, the Ghana Police Service, as we do know, has a shot of maximum security ahead of this match in Babayara. where the match will be played in Kumasi. Here are excerpts of the statement for you now, issued by the Ghana Police Service. It talks about security measures in place for the World Cup qualifiers, and the first point we have there talks about the fact that the police administration has put in place stringent measures to provide security coverage for the World Cup qualifiers between the Black Stars of Ghana and the Super Eagles of Nigeria on Friday, March 25, 2022 at the Babayara Sports Stadium in Kumasi. Now, the second point talks about the fact that in assuring officials of the GFA Cup and FIFA of an incident-free event, the police, in concert with other security services, will deploy personnel in and around Babayara Sports Stadium and within the Kumasi metropolis in general. As part of the arrangements, there will be an additional deployment of highway and motorbike patrols to actually augment the existing security deployment along all 8 entry routes that we have into Kumasi and other adjoining regions as well. But the last point talks about the fact that at the Babayara Sports Stadium, the Police MTTD has made adequate provisions to ensure effective traffic management. In view of this, the following roads that you see on your screens now will be blocked. So there you have it. The eastern parts of the stadium, and also have Britannia, and then some areas, including the western side of Britannia, will also be closed or blocked. So there you have it in the statement. And the fifth point talks about the fact that in partnership with the national security, the police will screen everyone entering the stadium for offensive and lethal weapons. So there you have it from the Ghana Police Service on this matter. Now, who will win? Actually, who will you actually support if you are both Ghanaian and Nigerian? That's a big question for the 7 children of a chief of an Igbo community here in Ghana that are split between the Black Stars of Ghana and the Super Eagles as well. Joy Sports' Asare Bediako was at their East Legon residence earlier this week.
The Black Stars and the Super Eagles are yet to clash for the coveted ticket to the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, but the banter between Ghanaians and Nigerians is as intense as midday sun. The story is no different in the home of the king of the Igbo community in Ghana.
The Super, look, Super and the Eagle, sorry the Eagle, have you ever seen any star as black before? Have you ever seen a star as black before? Have you ever seen a black star before? Have you ever seen star as a black before? This is green eagles. The green is the grass. The green represent Africa, and the eagle soil a lot, and the eagle carry weight and strength. What are you talking about?
The Igbo king of Ghana, Dr. Chukwudi Ihenetu, is married to Briwa-born Liberty Kwenu. The couple has 7 children, and ahead of the March 25 big game, the children are split between the Black Stars and the Super Eagles. Angel and Martin will be rooting for Nigeria.
The players have great skills. Secondly, I just have a strong feeling that, they're going to make us proud. I think Nigeria 2, Ghana 1.
Second leg?
Second. I think Nigeria 4, Ghana 1.
We have a better team, we have teamwork, and we have the best or the good players. Like we have a player like Nacho and Wilfred Ndidi. So we can score Ghana, but the match won't be easy. But I think Nigeria is going to win 1, and when we go to our home, Nigeria is going to play goalless draw.
Angel and Martin's sibling Evans will be supporting Ghana instead.
I don't think Nigeria is going to win us because the history is going to repeat itself again. Nigeria is never going to beat Ghana. Ghana is going to beat them only 1 goal. We will go to their home, we will play 2-0 against Nigeria.
The game is christened the Jollof Derby. Ghana Jollof or Nigeria Jollof. The Igbo king of Ghana prefers the latter.
I'm a Nigerian, and my mom cooked the best jollof. So nobody will ever say that his or her mother food is not nice. So my mom treated us with jollof rice. So Ghana jollof rice cannot be compared to Nigeria jollof rice, more especially when my mom cooked. So jollof rice of Nigeria is the best.
But his daughter Liberty has a different opinion altogether.
When I tasted Nigerian jollof, was but Ghana jollof, God, is the best.
No matter who secures qualification to the 2022 World Cup, one thing is for sure: the family of the Igbo king of Ghana will enjoy a West African jollof.
And we are all certain that we'll have some jollof at the end of the game, which will be happening in a few hours from now. But we do know as well that Joy Sports has been analyzing the match. Joel Botes with Joy Sports joins us now with some analysis on the game that will be happening in the Ashanti region. Well, first of all, what reports are you picking about the mood now in the Ashanti region with regard to the game that will be happening there?
Yeah, so headed into this big tie, speaking from today, it's looking like the people in Kumasi are quite excited.
Right.
Students from KNUST are out there playing their jama, enjoying, trying to
some morale.
Exactly, trying to lift the spirits and the mood of the players out there. Also, we're picking that the Nigerian team has arrived in Ghana. They are also there in Kumasi at the moment. They may train this evening, then we might get to see some images and stuff out there coming from their camp. But also, with the Ghanaian camp, we are noticing that there's a player injured, and that's in Edmond Addo. And it's looking like we may not be able to replace him immediately for this first leg. So,
you know what, I'm first of all interested in Ghana, because Ghana has been at the center of all controversy ever since the fixtures were up. What's happening to the national team now in terms of getting our team together and putting out very best that will play against Nigeria?
With regards to getting the squad, I think we're in safe hands in terms of the technical team, in the hands of Chris Hughton, who has managed teams like Brighton, Tottenham, and others in the Premier League. We also have Otuado, who works with Dortmund, as well as Didi Dramani and George Boateng, who also is a coach for the Aston Villa under-23. This is a good technical team assembled together. So I think in terms of squad-wise, we're good. The squad list that was released was okay. I had no major issues with it. I think it would then come down to the tactics we deploy and also how we decide to go and attack this game. If we decide to go defensive because we're playing at a home ground, we don't know. That may affect us. But if we decide to go attacking, try to get the maximum out of that game, then hopefully.
Is the home support anything to go by?
Yeah, I think home support.
Particularly when the Nigerians seem to be so confident going into this game. What's giving that confidence to the Super Eagles this time around?
I think it's because they've had an organized setup. If you look at the squad, they've not had major issues. It's a team that has been consistent over the years. A few debutants, 1 or 2 in there. It's not like Ghana where over time you may find 3 or 4 debutants in our team, but they've had a consistent squad. And they've also they've accepted their team as, yes, this is the nation we are standing for. And in that perspective, that's how they are driving and trying to go towards their goals. Let's not forget, they just changed the coach who took over just before the AFCON. And we saw how great they performed in the group stages prior to the knockout stage. It was unfortunate that they got eliminated, but if you watch how they played, it was one that everyone was proud of. And I believe that's why they are very...
And why will a win be so crucial to a national team like the Black Stars?
I think it sends a message. A win like this sends a message to the Ghanaians because it's one that we are looking to bring back the love for. And we've had several instances over the years where we've not had too much joy coming from our national team. Let's not forget we were not able to make it to the 2018 World Cup. So making it to this World Cup means a lot to the nation. And this victory does not just stand for a World Cup victory, but also the rivalry we have with Nigeria. We're able to get that hurdle over and say, look, we have the bragging rights. We have what it takes to go to the World Cup. You don't stand a chance. So that is why this means a lot.
Let's see how that will go. Your predictions?
You just caught me off guard.
Yeah, right.
I'll say I'm going for a Ghana victory in Ghana, and we are hoping that they are able to secure at least a draw in Nigeria.
Joy Wates with Joy Sports, and be on the lookout for the commentary live on our platforms here at Multimedia. Don't forget that this is all we have for you in this package of the polls. My name is Blaise Ogan. Do log on to myjoyonline.com for more updates on the stories that we're bringing you here on the Joy News channel.